Welcome everyone to our spring Inside the Box lecture series. And I wanted to study something that I didn't know a lot about. I still don't. And I've always been curious about transportation design. I recall as a student studying that Walter Gropius did the insides of trains, and there are planes, automobiles, and ships. And I also taught at a naval architecture school on Long Island for 6 years, and still don't know the answer to this question until I met Francesca about 4 years ago at an interior design roundtable. And we fortunately sat next to one another. So I'd like to introduce you to Francesca Bucci. She's the president of BG Studio International, Inc. Born in Rome, Francesca Bucci has a MA in architecture from the University of Rome. This, along with work at leading firms, Perkins and Will, Peter Marino, Polshek and Partners, these are amazing firms, solidified her expertise in architecture, interiors, and project management. Additionally, she became fluent in designing cruise ships, yachts, high-end retail and hospitality properties, and managing teams. In 2002, she established her own amazing firm, BG Studio International, in New York. The practice specializes in upscale, hospitality, cruise ship, restaurant, multifamily interiors, architecture, and planning. Working with luxury developers, hotels, and cruise brands, firm projects are located in New York, Miami, and Europe. She counts Royal Caribbean International, Celebrity Cruises, and Azamara Club Cruises as clients. So welcome, Francesca. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you, Carol. It's an honor to be part of this. As I always tell you, SVA, it is my favorite school in New York, but in general, I think that you guys are doing an amazing job at preparing the students for their future. So, well, without further ado, I just kind of want to share my screen and see what we have today. Okay. So today we are going to, just want to make sure you see my screen, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So today we are going to talk about everything that navigates, everything that is on the water. And we're going to talk about cruise ships, ocean liners, mega yachts, and what makes this project so amazing, and how do we really do it? Our firm is one of the really few firms in this country that has this type of expertise. We've been working on this field for over 20 years. And we're very proud of what we learned throughout the years. So what's really special about this type of, oh, I can't go. All right. What's really special about this type of projects is, I think it's the question that I love every time I meet someone and they say, oh, you're an architect, what do you do? And the expected answer is, oh, I do building, I do restaurants, I do residential. And when the answer comes and I say, I do cruise ship design, you know, the mouth open wide and the jaws drop and say, what's that? I said, well, it's an interesting discipline. It's basically a big building that is put horizontal and navigates in water. And he goes like, no, I can't believe this. And I said, like, yeah, it's exactly that. It's not that different. And so I'm looking at the beautiful Zaha, you know, favorite architect, and one of the buildings in Beijing, the Seoul Tower. And I said, like, I'm looking at it, and it's like, yeah, it's true, it's not that different. So, and what does it mean it's not that different? Of course it's different. But what's not that different is the process. It's the process of designing, which is really what we're interested in here. So first of all, I would like to put your attention to the fact that this is sheer size of the ships are just amazing, but not to be scared about. But the size is something that it's really one of the most important factor, and maybe even the main differentiator. Here on the left, you have an amazing picture of one of our modern cruise ships, and they overimposed the Titanic in front of it. There is no way to describe how big is a cruise ship because we never really get to see it very close. And we don't have this kind of relationship with the cruise ships that we have with buildings. But here on the right side, there is a little bit of a comparison between the buildings that we all know and what the ship looks like when you put it on a vertical scale. And so the big building that we saw before, the Zaidi building, it looks like it's kind of tiny now, only 200 meters, as we see the biggest ship on the world. Right now, it's not called Symphony of the Seas anymore. The Royal Caribbean just launched the latest and greatest called Wonder of the Seas. It is 362 meters, so it's a lot of feet. It's about 3 football fields, just to give you a scale. And it just it stands there, and everybody wonders, how do we do this? How do we build these amazing buildings? So I think that one of the important things is to understand the basic of the cruise ships and just in general of the vessels, and trying to get familiar with the terminology, because when we start designing a cruise ship, everybody talks to you with this different lingo. To tell you the truth, it is like a culture almost. People will not talk to you if you don't say the back of the ship instead of saying aft, or the front of the ship instead of say forward, or the right side of the ship instead of say starboard. It becomes, I'm just saying that because it becomes part of the culture, basically. And so if you go back to this slide on your own time, you will see, you will kind of learn, some of those terminology that are very important. So question is, how is it really built? And how do we get to design and build this ship? So first of all, a cruise ship, it's built, and this is like the silhouette of a typical cruise ship. It is really built from the bottom up, and it's built into these blocks that are called engineering units. So the shipyards, who are, it's really your general contractor, except that under them, you have all the specialties. It's not your general contractor that then is going to hire your subcontractors and things like this. Everything is like under the wing of the shipyard. It controls everything. And this is how they divide it. Most of the time, you have like all these different engineering units, and you can imagine that in ships like this that are about 9,000 passengers, as we're not the only architects on this project, but we typically design certain areas. So I would say that a ship like this, about, let's say 6,000, 9,000 passengers, is probably divided in 6 or 7 or 8 firms, which still makes every firm work on a lot of space. And every firm is assigned usually to these engineering units, and their areas will pertain to some of that, which means that you're going to start working on the EU1, but you also designing EU5. The fact that it's going to be installed after doesn't really delay the design process in a sense. So you start working and designing everything at the same time. So it's a little bit of a Lego situation on board. And it's actually incredibly simple, the way a ship is put together. So in step 1, there is this platform that it's really basically a ceiling and a slab at the same time. But let's say for the time being, for the sake of argument, it's really more of a ceiling than a slab. So you take the ceiling, then now it's not up, but it's on the floor, upside down, and they start inserting basically structural beams, and they start inserting what we call pillars. We don't call it columns, we call it pillars. Between the pillars, they start inserting the main partitions. So, and then when the step two, when the block of, let's say, several spaces are just kind of bolted down, this whole thing kind of flips over. So it flips over, and now it becomes something that you can recognize. Why do they do that? It's just really basically for easiness of construction, because after they build this, they're going to build another deck and another deck and another deck. So it's this kind of like a stack of pancakes that that you keep having. Now you will ask, well, this is not the only section that there is on the ship, right? No, it's not, because there are many sections like this, not just vertically, but also added horizontally. And we'll see how they do that as well. So here is how it comes together, you know, those little blocks from step 1, 2, 3, 4, more blocks, more blocks, more blocks, more blocks, until the ship is finally constructed. This picture in here is kind of interesting because you kind of makes you understand how the blocks are added together. They're not just stacked, but they also jointed section at, you know, in various parts of the ship. So one important thing, and one of the elements that are particular about the ships are the actual staterooms, which are the cabins. Again, we don't call it cabins, we call it staterooms. The staterooms are typically prefabricated. The work that goes in making the staterooms function to a level of perfection that still these days I find hard to believe. Those are prefabricated units, and they're done with an immense precision. Right now, I would like to show you a small video that shows what this prefabrication process consists of.
I'm Arndt Verhoeks. I'm the head of the Prefabricated facility. Prefabricated is building the staterooms and the crew cabins for Quantum of the Seas. We were founded in 2007. Our managing director is the same as from Meyer Shipyard. It's Bernard Meyer himself. So this shows the close contact between the two companies. We are the only cabin manufacturer for Meyer Shipyard, so we have a real close relationship. Our production is working like you know from the automobile industry. So we have a flowing belt which is divided into certain working steps, and the workers are doing every 14 minutes the same. So we produce every 14 minutes one wet unit, and afterwards we see also the cabin part where the same principle is going.
The cabin factory is a good example of how you can industrialize production and how you can actually put that on a flow line.
The amount of quality the owner Royal Caribbean is requesting from us. So this is really a high-level cabin and a high-level bathroom, and this is quite challenging. So Quantum is for us a milestone. We know exactly how it functions later on board, how the requests from the shipyards are, what has to be done with the cabin, that everything fits later on in Quantum completely together. And then they make connections from outside. The carpet is laid, they place down the sofas, and so on, and after that, cabin is ready for the cruise.
These staterooms are zero defect, they are fully tested, they have tested the water, the electricity, the air conditioning, everything, every functionality is tested. I know that this is in hand, but it is hand with the tremendous partnership what we have with the shipyard, the tremendous designers we have, and the process what we normally are doing in order to make sure that this is well managed.
So in a sense, you have an idea of when we get to start the design process, even of the staterooms, how technical it becomes to design these things, because there are a lot of integrated systems. There are things that we need to respect, and this is why I always say that, you know, cruise ship design it's a beautiful art of design and hospitality with really a remarkable technical expertise that you need to learn. And who's teaching you this? Well, you know, in the future, I hope that there will be more schools that teach this discipline. But basically, you're really learning on the job. You're learning on firms, in firms like ours, where the design is, you know, it's been this discipline has been with us for many, many years. So here you see something that is called the general arrangement plan, or GA. This is kind of really shows all the decks, all the part of the ships from top to bottom, and it's divided into compartments in plans and in section. Unfortunately, I cannot show you the real GAs. This is just an example. The drawings are proprietary, but it is, you know, this, when somebody comes with a GA, it's basically a roll of paper that is, you know, rolls out for like a, you know, feet and feet and feet, because it's this kind of really huge, long drawing where you see all the decks put together like this, and with the section of the ships and all the dimension. So just want to show you a few things of, you know, that will probably, you know, be interesting to see on what happens under construction. So here, like, those are pictures of the shipyards, of the various part of the ships. It's the Chantier l'Atlantique. It's one of the big shipyards in France. And just to see this project coming alive and under construction is just amazing. You will see here in this picture, you notice that all the systems on the cruise ships, they actually run horizontally. And this is one of the reasons why the ceiling heights on the ship are always somehow restricted, because all the systems, all the MEPs, all the electrical, everything runs horizontally. And again, a few other under construction picture. This big arrow points to a weld seam, and that welding seam is actually this welding seam in here, and this is actually how the sections are put together. I know it's amazing, but they actually weld it together, piece by piece, deck by deck. And then, you know, of course, structurally also bolted down, but they all have the systems of welding steel. And sometimes things happen, like the client decides to, for instance, there have been instances that they want to actually enlarge or lengthen cruise ships because they're older ships and they can actually make it longer. And what they do the inverse, right? They unweld them, they separate the two pieces, and they slide section. You know, for instance, here you see a section of the ship that they just navigate it. They navigate this piece, they build it, and then they navigate it from one shipyard to another shipyard. And then it gets to the shipyard where the ship is. It gets inserted in the middle of the two parts of the ship that have been separated, and then welded together. And here you have it, a longer ship. And voila, this is, you know, this is what the end of the result is. And again, I'm showing you this as, you know, one of the biggest, you know, biggest ships in the world. And there is not only ships like this, there are ships of all sizes, clearly. I just think the Royal Caribbean does an amazing job at providing this incredible architecture on board the ship. So if you're curious about the cost of all these projects, here it's a little bit of a, little chart. So something up to 500 passenger, it's about, 250, $260 million. If you go to the ship that I just showed you, where you have over 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 passengers, so we are talking about over $1 billion. And sounds like a lot of money, but there is a lot that goes into it. So now, not to make you sad, but not everything goes well. And here you see the Titanic that everybody understands, and the story. And on the right side is the Costa Concordia, which is a ship that basically sunk, or actually, as we say it, listed, like just kind of went down on one side off the coast of Italy, in Tuscany. It was a very unfortunate event, but things like this don't happen often. Actually, they happen very, very rarely. And the reason that they happen very rarely is because when the Titanic went down, they didn't have all the codes and regulations that now the industry has. And so after the Titanic incident, this international organization called IMO basically started writing almost like a building code, except that is a very, very, very dense code. And it doesn't just include, part of architecture and building construction. It really includes everything. Includes the engine, includes the fire, the safety, includes all part of the ships that we don't, we don't design it. We know that they exist, but the the fundamental part of the ship is like that it needs to navigate safely. And so the SOLAS code, which stands for Safety of Life at Sea, regulates this. And it's like the building code. Every time there is a little accident or a big accident, the code becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Another part of the regulations on board is actually the sanitation. So there is the USPH, which is the US Public Health Service, that basically regulates a lot of the, most of the venues where there is food. And they're very, very strict. There are a lot of inspections, constant inspections to make sure that, bad things don't happen. So just to kind of in a nutshell, if you were asking me about like, what are your top 3 concern on the ship? And I would say definitely fire. And the reason that is a concern is because it is a long building, and like in construction, in normal land-based buildings, you need separations. So the way that the ships work, basically they're separated horizontally and vertically from top to bottom, like buildings with sheer walls, to separate and basically literally isolate sections of the ships, so that people can evacuate safely if they need to, or they can go from one section to another without having the fire coming with them. The stability is another big problem, clearly, along with humidity and salt and weight and all these kind of things. But stability is one of the main things on the ship, and so we need to design with that in mind. And when I pick these 3 is because they do impact us. They do impact the way we design, the way we think about spaces. And life safety, of course, is also another big thing. And again, it's something that impacts us, if nothing else, for the fact that those life-saving boats, they're usually on the side of the ship. And what do you do if your venue has 10 lifeboats in front of the windows? Because it's got to happen somewhere. And so how do you treat those windows? What do you do with your venue? How do you avoid people looking out at those boats? And maybe trying to find a design solution that kind of invert this, this view in a sense. And so speaking of things that, that you need to design in a certain way on the ship, for instance, chandeliers, right? Now, as you all know, the ship moves, and so everything else inside the ship. The furniture could move, the light fixtures can move. So the furniture is not bolted down because the ship actually doesn't really move that much. But if you were to design one of those beautiful Austrian chandeliers with cables and those kind of really sexy things that we designers like to specify and design, well, it's not going to be possible in here. You need to find a way of stabilize the rods, because they do swing. And when they swing, even just a little bit, it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant for the people who are on board, because people tend to be seasick with objects and move around them. So we need to stabilize things. This is kind of like the bottom line. Another interesting, fun fact about the cruise ship design is that, as I was mentioning before, the ceilings are not that high. And because of the systems, they run horizontally. So when the ceilings are not that high, you need to try to make your floors a little bit interesting, because otherwise the ceiling is a little low. It's becoming, there is a problem, an optical problem in there. So if you have people to actually look down instead of looking up all the time, or at least at an eye level, the result and the perception of your 3D space is, and the fact that the ceiling is not that high, it's really minimized. Another element that we often encounter in our space, and those are the spaces where we don't have the ceiling problem, because we have a beautiful double-story space, which happens, for instance, in the dining venue. But those venues that have a balcony, balustrade, and a double-story, they actually need to be, there is this 30% rule that governs the ship, and so that the amount of area of perimeter that is enclosed needs to be 30% open compared to the perimeter of the space, at least, which means that this hole in here that it's marked in red, they have to be 30% open. This is for fire regulation. So do you see, even our design needs to work around these restrictions, and still needs to look beautiful. As I was mentioning before, the dining, the dining with the USPH and the CDC regulation and the Coast Guard regulation, the dining is one of the most regulated places on board, and we need to be very, very careful when we specify or we design the buffet and all the, like the dining halls or dining room in general. It's been maybe 10 years. On the left-hand side, you see a bunch of faucets in here, and now it's mandatory for the dining venues to have washing, basically sinks at the beginning of the venue. So now you probably kind of arching your eyebrows right now and thinking, how do we put a sink in a beautiful main dining room? Well, that's another art. It's another thing that that we need to try to solve. How do we integrate this rules and regulations within the design. So another thing that navigates is their ocean liners, and the ocean liners are ships of the past, right? Before we had this modern cruise ship industry, until probably the 60s, we had ocean liners. And one of the last ocean liners is actually the Queen Elizabeth II. You may have heard that this ship was at one point purchased by, it was a Cunard, it's an English brand, it's a British brand, a very historical British brand, that it was purchased by Dubai and the Prince of Dubai at one point. So they decided to purchase this monument. Basically, it was like the last ocean liner remaining in the world, and then they wanted to transform into a permanent hotel that they would just be done permanently in the port of Dubai. So they hire us, and this was many years ago, to actually do that. So the ship is amazing inside. It's like you see, these are like existing pictures of, again, it has this kind of 50s, 60s vibe, and it's kind of very interesting. But of course, being Dubai, what Dubai was, you can imagine that, some of these things, they really didn't care, and they wanted to turn into something completely different. Some we managed to convince them otherwise. And for instance, one of the main dining rooms, the Queen's Grill, you will see before and after. This is one of our renderings where, again, we kept some of the, still like the kind of historical, little bit of an Art Deco feel on this room, but still feeling respectful of the maritime tradition and what the QE2 represented. And it was an amazing experience to work on the ship, on this vessel. It's very unique experience. So again, one interesting part about the ship is that the QE2 was very famous for its funnel, which is that part that sits, that kind of almost, it's not a pyramidal, but it's a truncated cone that sits at the top of the ship that has smoke coming out. It's where the engines, release their smokes and everything. So they wanted to turn this funnel into a residence. And so they call it the villa. So this villa, of course, had everything that Dubai wanted. He had rock crystal staircases, cut jewels, 24-karat gold stains. And it was a little bit over the top, I have to say. But here, some of the transformation that we were proposing of the funnel is to actually not turning this just into this, here you see a section, into this building of these 4-story buildings, actually. But they also wanted to have something special. So we devised this telescopic lounge, basically, that would be projecting high about probably 20 meters, 20, 25 meters. And you will have, they call it the crown jewel, and you will have this incredible view suspended in the sky. Now, this is so over the top and so crazy that, needless to say, the ship really wasn't built because the 2008 crash happened, and the economy kind of collapsed, and the economy of Dubai did that. So long story short, the QE2 is still in the port of Dubai, untouched, with its engine running. And I think they're going to, right now, I think it's basically a museum, and they have visitors. So this project never happened, but for sure it was a very unique project. So another very unique project that we've done lately is this mega yacht. this is not just a mega yacht, but it is a yacht that it's one of the most sustainable yachts in the world. It's a yacht that navigates, a super yacht. It's about 100 meters long. And it's a yacht that navigates only in the Galapagos. So the most incredible untouched environment that is still existing on this planet. I've been, and it's an amazing experience to just see how untouched nature is. So here's Flora, Celebrity Flora. It's by Celebrity Cruises, and it was a really good experience. So we actually get to design the whole vessel, as we usually are in collaboration with other architectural firms. Here we really got to design from top to bottom, which was, aside from a great experience, but just like the level of control that we could have on the design was just amazing. So just a little comparison between the Q2, which we saw before, and Flora. So it's still Q2 was really a tiny ship. Flora, it's really very small. It's basically a super yacht, mega yacht. So a few images that illustrates some features of the ship. We just devised this architecture, this kind of yin and yang on the aft of the ship. And the top two are two penthouse suites that they're really amazing, very, very curated. And again, this is a very expensive vacation in general. And so the clientele is very high-end, and we needed to be at that level. But it's interesting to see the construction, reconstruction, and the finished product. This is one of the two penthouse suites, where again, every detail was very, very curated to the level of very, every little detail. And one thing that I wanted to mention is that every material really needed to be as sustainable as possible. A lot of the materials were actually sourced from Ecuador. Galapagos are islands from Ecuador. And so we try to use local manufacturers, local textiles, anything that we could find locally. Of course, not everything, but we made really very credible effort. This is one of the pools, again, doing construction and the finish. And this is being built in Rotterdam, piece by piece, the main dining room. And again, you'll see the incredible amount of stuff that is above those ceilings. It's just a maze of things. And the cabins, the staterooms. Here is me laying down, trying to understand the angle of the light of the nightstand. So this is the type of things that, the type of attention that we need to give to these projects. And the top deck with these cabanas where you can actually do this glamping at sea. You can sleep there at night. You can have dinner, private butlers, and all this interesting stuff. And so, last but not least, clearly we have a situation, we've had a situation with COVID on this last couple of years, and not just us, but the rest of the world. It's been a very hard season for a couple of years for cruise ships. They stopped navigating for over a year. This never happened. It's been a little bit devastating for the industry. However, this is an industry that is extremely resilient and bounced back, and they really demonstrated that It's one of the safest way to really travel. They made incredible effort in make sure that that the guests are safe, and all the measures have been taken, and in collaboration with the CDC. But anyway, I think that it's a brighter future now. So this is it for me, and thank you for listening. And if there are any questions, I'll take it.